Hey, everybody. This is Kathy. Welcome. This is a very much impromptu, completely live that we're hosting because I've gotten a lot of feedback. We published a lot of research, and there's been a lot of questions that have been posed. And rather than deal with them one on one, I thought that it would be better to maybe do a quick live, even though there's absolutely no notification to anybody, either on our podcast over on Spotify or here on YouTube, that we were going to do this afternoon. But for a case that's been closed for over 6 months now, there is a lot going on in Idaho versus Kohberger that I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going over, about 4 or 5 bulleted items that I wanted to share with you based on research that we've just put out over the course of the past couple days. First and foremost, if you have not yet already, please take a look at our community posting or our content where we've notified you that there is a very important, in my opinion, case that the United States Supreme Court SCOTUS has agreed to take on. And there are so many people who try to get the Supreme Court to hear their cases, and a very, very minimal amount who are successful. The case, hi, Soul Sister, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Sorry for the lack of notice, but felt we needed to go live to address just a multitude of questions that we're getting. Again, first and foremost, I'm going to go over about 4 or 5 things and then open up if you guys have any questions. But if you have not yet taken a look at the case before SCOTUS, one of the rare that makes its way to the Supreme Court, it's something like 98% of people who try to get their cases heard by the Supreme Court are denied. It's a very, very low minimum number of cases that the High Court takes on. Hunter versus United States is, in my opinion, one that's worth your time in looking at, because I know many of you have been asking. Mr. Kohberger waived his appellate rights when he stood up in open court and he signed that plea deal that many people were very surprised to see him sign, because a lot of people, myself included, were thinking that this, at the time, it was more than 2.5-year-old case where the defense stands up and says, my client's factually innocent. That doesn't happen. That is not normal. Usually what defense counsel will say is, there's reasonable doubt all over the place here, Judge. And we're not going to sign any plea deals. We're going to go to trial. And I think the jury will agree that there must be evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And this was a capital case to begin with. So everything came to a halt regarding the criminal proceedings in terms of prosecution back in July when Mr. Kohberger stood up in open court. And you heard, I believe, Judge Hippler, when he went through all of the things to make sure that this was Mr. Kohberger's intent, that no one had forced him to take this plea deal. No one had forced him to basically say, hey, I don't want to go to trial. No one had coerced him, promised him anything else. And when it got to the appellate rights, because that plea deal says very clearly, I waive all my rights to appeal. Judge Hippler said words to the effect, in quoting a 2019 United States Supreme Court case, guys, Garza versus Idaho. Do you remember what he said? He said, yeah, words to the effect of, you're signing away your appellate rights, but we know that it's not the case. And that's because of Garza. Garza is a U.S. Supreme Court case, and it states that even when someone signs a plea deal, there's certain examples, there's certain grounds that they can still go on to challenge that plea deal and to try to get it thrown off the table, to get the sentence thrown out, and one of them is ineffective assistance of counsel. That is a Fifth Amendment privilege. That's why it's federal. It's the federal Constitution says that you must go ahead. Hey, Outcast is here. Just the person I want to talk to. Hang around, Outcast. Thanks. Garza said, hey, Mr. Kohberger, yeah, he signed this piece of paper, but ineffective assistance of counsel, new evidence of, let's just say there's new DNA that could clear someone. There's very few limitations, but this case, Hunter versus United States, is about a man from Texas. He was brought up in charges federal, not state. But what he said is, hey, if I was in the Ninth Circuit, which is where Idaho is, federal appellate court, my appeal wouldn't have gotten thrown out by the Fifth Circuit here over in Texas. And so that court caught the Supreme Court's attention. And a couple of months before Mr. Kohberger pled guilty, the Supreme Court agreed to take on this case. It's taken until now. They have to, this is for the 2025-2026 term, that the Supreme Court's going to have what's called oral argument, you guys. I recommend, if you're interested in learning if there's going to be more grounds for people to be able to appeal plea deals, this is the time to do it, because this is coming right from the horse's mouth. Oral argument is March 3rd. That's just about 40 days from now. And then SCOTUS has to make a ruling by the end of this term, which is June. Then they pack things up. They go on their summer recess, and they come back first week of October for the new year, which would be 26-27. But one of the questions presented is, what do I have to show if I have signed a plea deal and I want to challenge that plea deal that says I don't have any appellate rights? I definitely recommend that you listen in on oral argument if you're interested in this case, guys, because this may expand Garza to include more reasons why and how a plea deal can be thrown out. And if you listen to oral argument, I have the link. I provided it in my last couple of presentations I did on Hunter. If you listen to how the Supreme Court, what questions the justices on SCOTUS are asking the government, are asking Hunter's attorneys, and the comments that they make, you may be able to understand, even before they write that order, the ruling, how they're leaning. If Garza is going to continue to remain in place, if Garza is going to be expanded, some say Garza might be even retracted. I don't think so. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to overrule Garza. They're going to do, at least in my opinion, doesn't count any more than yours does. I just have a little bit more, I think, advanced information because I've been watching this appeal play its way out. I think either Garza is going to remain intact, or the Supreme Court may add additional grounds for when and how someone can challenge their plea deal. I mean, but what timing for this to happen? March 3rd, 2026. Outcast, are you going to be tuning into SCOTUS? You can listen live. If anybody's in Washington, you might be able to go in there and sit in and watch the proceedings live. It's a cool thing. I've been to the Supreme Court once, and it's just amazing. That's where everything happens. So we're going to definitely keep an eye on that. Also, with respect to other litigation, we're waiting for Washington State University to come back in the action of Goncalves et al. Versus Washington State University that was filed earlier this month. WSU needs to be served with process. That means a summons and a complaint has to go to WSU, and then they come back. I'm predicting that we may see a motion to dismiss the complaint on certain grounds, or at least certain counts within that complaint. They may file what's called an answer and affirmative defenses, where they answer, they say, okay, we deny, and then they raise what's called defenses to the claims. They may raise a counterclaim and want to bring Mr. Kohberger into the case, which, if that happens, or if they try to have him deposed, because right now he doesn't have any Fifth Amendment privileges, he has no litigation pending, maybe that's when he might raise the appeal. A lot of people think he might. And based on what we're seeing, I've been doing some real heavy duty research. I mean, when I'm not online here, I spend a majority of my time going over those papers, those documents. Those documents are gold. There's so much information there. I'm very sorry to have to report, however, that both Idaho State Police and Judge Hippler are, in a way, and I'm just, saying this my opinion, playing peekaboo. Not unlike the person that MM saw in the window, making herself shown and hiding. Both of them, within the past 3 weeks, the court did it December 30th, when they released documents that were consistent with what the court ruled December 18th were to be released to the public. And that includes all the documents under seal in the eliminate filings. What's that? Oh, I don't know. Text messages between people on November 13th, 2022. That's under seal. CSLI, that's under seal. Amazon. Wouldn't you like to see the receipt from Amazon for the purchase of this sheath? And we're going to get to the sheath in just a minute. Others are witness identification by bushy eyebrows, suspect vehicle 1. That's what's under seal. And Judge Hippler said a lot of those documents were to be unsealed to the public. It's in the December 18th order. That order has never been rescinded. I know people are thinking that they released a few things the end of March of 2025. That's not any of the eliminate filings. It was some of the filings from people that were involved in ISP, the forensics department and whatnot, Mallory and everything else. But Judge Hippler said they were to be released. There were some things in there, personal information, no doubt about it. But hey, that's on Judge Hippler. He ruled that stuff was to be released to the public. And that got taken down December 30th. We are now 100 days since the October 16th, 2025 third court order regarding the release of documents from the first quarter of 2025 was sent out to both sides. Both sides filed their objections and non-objections. The state was really jumping up and down objecting. Judge Hippler said, objections noted, I'm overruling. And he ruled dozens upon dozens of documents were to be released to the public. Some with redactions, others without redactions. And as of right now, with the peekaboo that happened on December 30th, giving people a look, got taken down. There's still nothing on the docket. And ISP did the same thing the other day. They came across and they dropped batch number 7 of all photographs. I think it was over 2,600, 2,700 documents. And my eyes went immediately to one thing. And I wonder if you guys know what it is. I've been reporting on it heavy over the past couple of months. Hey, everybody. Let's see who your soul sister, first one here. Outcast, very happy to see you. I've got a question for you just a little bit. Tina, good to see you. Sage Reality, thank you for being here. Nadia, thank you for being here. And we got Christina is laughing. Good to see you. Good to see you, Christina. And Christina's saying this case is getting on her nerves. She hates this case. Outcast, remind me to talk about Ragnar, because you'll remember I've been chewing your ear for about 6 months about Ragnar. And this goes to this information that some people are hearing. And we got to give a shout out to Connor for getting the body cam footage. It appears at number 5 of the Snyder body cam. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And I'm going to bring in the Ragnar connection here in just a minute. But, okay, so we went over. We want to definitely keep our eye on Hunter versus United States. We want to keep our eye on what's going on with the WSU lawsuit in terms of WSU, Washington State University's response. It's either going to be a responsive motion or it's going to be responsive pleading to the lawsuit. They have an opportunity to be heard. We're going to see if possibly Kohberger is going to be pulled in as a third-party defendant, or if they're going to serve a notice of deposition, wanting to take his deposition, which may push him to appeal. And we got Hunter versus U.S. possibly helping him right now. Okay, all speculation. Everything here is opinion speculation. He has made no moves right now about appealing anything. But the timing is very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion. And then we want to talk a little bit about the Sheath. That's where I went to immediately. Of all the 2,700, and there were a lot of good things in there. We saw the warrant for the first time. It was sitting on the steps, and we saw in there that Nunez, you saw him leaving 11/22 and going back. He was going back to MPD headquarters, and he was writing out the warrant, which then went to the magistrate marshal. She signed off on it. There were two things there related to the weapon that the state says all of the injuries were caused by. Two things: a sheath and the weapon itself. Everything else had to do with a pew-pew, possibly. Magazines, fragments, maybe that landed, and fireworks, and that all went to the BF statement right away. And it was also said by DM that she heard a light and a flash. That tells me, it told me from the beginning that there was some nefarious activities happening on the first floor. And at some point, that all went bye-bye. It was never in the warrant affidavit. And when we refer to the warrant affidavit, we're talking about the PCA. The affidavit, which asked for a warrant to be issued for Mr. Kohberger's arrest, that was presented to Judge Megan E. Marshall the 29th of December, 2022, where she found probable cause and also issued the warrant, which I can't even be reminded. I just keep reminding myself of things here. I got another Post-it note waiting for this fourth court order, Judge Stephen J. Hippler, going into the end of 2024, finally. That's what the fourth court order is going to, and that's all the stuff for the Franks hearing under seal, and all of the motions to suppress, including the motions to suppress the Payne affidavit, all under seal right now. He's not anywhere near it because we're still trying to figure out what's going on with the third, having to do with first quarter of 2025. Everything's under seal. There's been no movement. It's like it's been a standstill for all of this. But that's okay, because that just makes us go back for the 10th time to see what's been released so far. And we're finding a lot of good kernels of information. Want to say hello to everyone. Blue Rain, good to see you here. And Soul Sister, number one person here, first person, thank you for being here today, everyone. Okay, been doing a lot of research on that sheath. So when those photos came out the other day, the 6 ones that were most interesting to me were as follows. Seeing that warrant, what it was that MPD thought was important to ask for on day number 1. Remember, that warrant was returned, signed, after 4 p.m. And that's when the infamous group of 5, who knows who those 5 people were, did their walkthrough. And then at 5:25 is when ISP, under the direction of Detective Jeffrey R. Talbot, started processing the crime scene. Right? The 5 people who walked through at 5 p.m. Not Mabbitt. What didn't she tell us in that early interview that she was on scene at 5? Although Outcast, I know that you and I seem to think it might have been as early as 12 o'clock or something, unconfirmed at this point. She's supposed to be there at 5 o'clock. She's signing the certificates. She didn't walk through she didn't go in until about 7 or 8, according to Talbot, when she came in with her assistant in order to remove the students on Sunday evening. No, the group of 5 consisted of the author of the warrant affidavit. Who is that again? Who knows who the author of the warrant affidavit was that was challenged in the Franks hearing? Motions to suppress, all denied by Judge Stephen J. Hippler. Yes, it was. Look it. And that Tequila's got the whole group. Thompson, the group of 5, Thompson, Plain, Blacker, Jennings, not Fry. Fry wasn't there yet. It was Detective Talbot, the head of ISP. He was contacted. ISP was contacted by the MPD at 12:22 p.m. on the 13th of November 2022. and asked to come in and assist. And they did a lot of stuff. They not only processed the crime scene, but they also did interviews. They checked. They did surveillance. They did surveillance of a warehouse the day that Mr. Kohberger was arrested. I mean, they were elbows deep in this investigation. And also, hey, how can we forget? They did the processing of the items of evidence that MPD said sent to them. Right? They did all of this. So it was again Payne, 5 o'clock. It was Payne, Blacker, Jennings, Thompson, and then the head of ISP crime scene processing, Detective Jeffrey Talbot. Now, after that happened, boom, that's when the processing team went into effect. And it was, if you look at Talbot's report, he will tell you, I think it's on page 4, who he assigned to do what. Okay, you're going to go down, you're going to do the scans. You're going to do the hand-drawn scans over here. You over here, Gilbertson, you're going to do something else. Over here, I want you to take the photographs. Over here, I want you to throw down, the numbers. And number 14, let's not forget, what was evidence number 14? 14, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Item number 14 is the case, in my opinion. It is the strong, I don't care what anyone says, without item 14, I don't think Mr. Kohberger, we might not even know what his name is today. It was, of course, it was the Sheath. The Sheath, the K-bar Sheath, was documented as being item number 14. However, when MPD took hold of that sheath, it didn't go to ISP in Meridian that day. Oh no. I mean, even though law enforcement says what you don't have a person of interest within 48 hours, the trail starts getting cold. And they're already, by the time ISP is hauling out of there after their first day's work, shortly after 10 a.m. on the 14th of November, 2022, it's already going well into hour number 24, right? I know that a lot of you don't agree. Hey, down the rabbit hole. Good to see you here. A lot of you don't agree with the timeline, but we got to go with what they say. The timeline, according to them, first it was supposed to be between 4 and 4:25, and then it somehow became sometime after 4:07, when the last time SV1 was seen on camera, and then 4:20 when it was seen speeding out of the neighborhood. So we got somewhere within after 4:07, because all right, let's just go with their theory. It's one person and one person only did all that damage that you saw in these photographs. It was one person and one person only. That is the official account. That is what Mr. Kohberger stood trial for. No one else has ever been arrested. There hasn't been a whisper of a co-conspirator, alternative perpetrator, perp before the fact, perpetrator after the fact. It's Mr. Kohberger, and Mr. Kohberger did everything. He can't drive past the camera at 11:12 at 4:07 and be in the house automatically. No, he's got to drive around. He's got to park where he's going to park. He's got to turn the car off. He's got to get out of the car. He's got to shut the door. He's got to do whatever he's going to do. If he's going to put on his magical whatever suit that DNA doesn't attach to or drop, because he didn't drop a ton of DNA, nor did he take any DNA with him from what we can tell. Get into the house. Okay, I'm calling it maybe going on 4:09 at that time. And then he's got to get out of there. He's got to walk back up that hill, go to the car, open the door, get in, whatever, and then drive to get to the point where he's seen on camera at 4:20. So I'm saying, and I think I'm pretty generous with this, that the timeline of the crime is going by the MPD's own allegations has got to be between 4:09 and 4:18, giving him 9 minutes maximum to do all that damage that you saw, run up and down steps, inflict all of those injuries on those 2 girls on the 3rd floor. Then Xana supposedly comes up and attacking her, running past that table, didn't fall on that weird low step on whatever he's holding, going, down the hall. And then, did you see the damage in that room? I looked at it one time. I'm never looking at those photos again. I don't like looking at, I'm not into that very, very much. But it looked like a ferocious event in both rooms, but especially in Xana's room. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. And then he gets out and he goes around the corner and then he's out. But hey, Payne is also saying that the timeline of the crimes went to 425. So what I want to ask Detective Payne is, who's still in the house for 20 to 425 if SV1 has already been seen, speeding out of the neighborhood? It's like questions like this. I don't understand why the magistrate didn't question, plus all of the myriad of other errors and inconsistencies right in the PCA, right at the starting point. Okay, so down the rabbit hole saying that she believes the car is a red herring. He's a criminology PhD. Well, you think he missed the chapter of you don't drive your own car to the crime scene? Down the rabbit hole in his studies. And that's saying, I wonder if going through security x-ray did any damage. Hey, oh, whoa, you're getting onto a very good point regarding the vial. Because in our recent documentation regarding the sheath, we have noticed quite a few inconsistencies. Number one, okay, people think the sheath went immediately to Meridian ISP. That is incorrect. The sheath remained with Moscow Police Department until the 16th of November, 2022, upon which time a call was placed to a certain Corporal Tarrantine of the ISP to be the courier, and he's supposed to be taking the sheath up to Meridian to be tested there. And if you look at his report that day regarding what happened on the 16th of November, according to him, he's not given sheath number 14, which is, and I had to confirm it. I had to see it for myself in the documents that came out. I knew that Talbot had written in his report that it was marked as evidence number 14, but I had to see that place card for myself. And sure enough, there it was. The sheath had the number 14 place card in it. And that, I think, is a vital point, because the item that was taken from Moscow Police Department via Walliford, who turns it over to another guy by the name of Tarrantine en route. He doesn't even take it to ISP. That sheath is docketed with number 11. And people are saying, well, what's the big deal? Well, if you look at the Talbot report, and I tell you, you have to read these things like 10 times before you start to absorb what they're telling you. But the last page of the Talbot report, page number 7, remember, this is the head of ISP. He was part of the 5 o'clock crew that walked through 1122 King Road. He managed the ISP. When you saw that drone going over, you saw, some drone, that was him assigning someone to do that. He writes, he gave all the evidence to Moscow Police Department, Detective Payne. That's who he gave the evidence to. And he went back to ISP. It was, I think, his Unit 2. And he put into the system the items of evidence that had been recorded. So that's telling me he's going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if I'm trying to figure out if he put it in pre-log. Pre-log is the ISP's, it's like a computer program where you enter into evidence. It helps with the chain of custody. Okay, this is the piece of evidence. Number 14 was found in Madison Mogan's room. And it's a USMC leather sheath. It's tagged as 14. And then what should have happened if it went into pre-log and it wasn't some other type of a computer system that Talbot put it into, knowing Talbot, I think he's pretty documents things really well. His reports look nothing like the Moscow Police Department's reports. If I were a waging person, I'm saying that's in pre-log, and that number should have been used to then say, okay, I gave the sheath to what's his face? Payne, Moscow Police Department, ISP hauled out of here. And then what should have happened then would be MPD coming in saying, we now have the sheath. The evidence tech took possession of it. Only problem, the regular evidence tech of all weeks, he picks this week to go on vacation. How many other multiple, this is a 4-person unaliving. How many times do you think the Moscow Police Department ever saw? The evidence tech was on vacation. They had someone, Leslie and Billy, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Leslie and Billy, thank you for being here. One of my really strong supporters. Of all weeks, the person who's trained to do evidence like tracking and teching would know how to go into pre-log. He's on vacation. So another person, I think her name is Nadine or something else. We found out what her name was because what's her face? The manager of the ISP log, the ISP crime scene. I'm sorry, ISP forensics wrote it in a report. She was having trouble with the evidence and had to keep calling ISP for help. This is the fill-in for the regular evidence person. So by the time that Walliford turns up at the MPD to pick up this sheath, it's in a brown paper bag. It's got some masking tape. Well, hang on here a second, boys and girls. That's not how you handle evidence. You put evidence in a proper container. You seal it just like that property was sealed with evidence tape. Like if you look at the pictures in Kaylee's room, you'll see that the sliding glass door has evidence tape not to go in or out of that area because that's a crime scene. That sheath should have had evidence tape around it and initials. And we even don't take my word for it. Take Sergeant Blacker's word for it, because when he took the vial containing the DNA profile that he picked up from ISP Meridian on the 21st of November, he said, oh yeah, the ISP vial was properly sealed with evidence tape. And I'm like, well, you're the name that's all over the ISP documentation for the MPD. You're the contact person on every single document. You don't know that evidence tape and initials were needed to secure that sheath when it was in the Moscow Police Department's hands for 3 days? You know, chain of custody is a mess. I don't know why they didn't challenge chain of custody. So we got Walliford coming on. He picks up the sheath. It's, I like to call it, my saying, it's thrown into a paper bag like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, not this precious piece of evidence for which a person could have gone to, I was going to say to the chair. It wasn't the chair. It was the squad. You're not going to seal it securely with evidence tape and initials. ISP gets it. And they're like, what's this? They had to put evidence tape and the initials at Meridian. And then the next day, the people who were working on the sheath on the 17th, oh yeah, it's sealed properly with evidence tape and initials. I'm like, hello? Do you understand? It didn't arrive that way from the Moscow Police Department. That was put on only at the ISP lab. And then we got the chain of custody for the sheath. You only see Tarentine's name on there, Walliford. It's like he didn't have anything to do with it. And then, then you have the first photographs that we got of the sheath, 10/31, October 31st. And then we saw the new photographs. Do people think it's the same Do people think it's the same piece of evidence or not? Hey, Aman, welcome. Caleb, very much into the First Amendment, constitutional issues. He's extremely, I know it's very important to you, as with many of you. This is an issue. Even if people feel that Mr. Kohberger, he pled guilty, he is guilty, no one else helped him. I mean, do we really want criminal trials to run like this? Behind closed doors, closed hearings, no documentation to the public. Supreme Court said years ago in the 1980 decisions, those courtrooms need to be open because the public need to go in there and act as an overseer to make sure that the government isn't overreaching. And that was impossible in this case. People couldn't discuss the case because the evidence was under seal. It's still under seal today. You got to go through hours and hours and hours of sifting to pull out a couple of kernels of information that you can add on. Okay, this is what happened here. This is how the sheath traveled from here to here to here. I mean, but hey, good thing I love looking at documents. I could look at documents this whole weekend. If I had nothing else to do, I'd be knee deep in those ISP documents, going over them again. in order to help to answer some questions that I have as to who happens to be unknown male A. I'd love to be able to answer that question. I'm about 2 points away from being able to, I think, securely kind of understand who A was. And we want to say hello, everybody. And what are people saying? 53. Yes, Caleb, I got 53 terabytes to go. But that's okay. Hey, what else do I have to do other than looking at documents? So now we know that the Sheath stayed in Moscow for 3 days. And by the way, if you look at the documentation, and I have it in a couple of my latest videos, ISPs say, hey, the Sheath is en route. But there may be some problems with pre-log. What? There's maybe some problems with pre-log. That's how you track the evidence for chain of custody. Yeah, I think there's probably some problems with pre-log, i.e., Turrentine didn't tell the people at ISP, hey, I didn't take this all the way from MPD. I got this from Walliford. Walliford's not even in the chain of custody for the ISP. So, okay, why is that important? Because it proves that there wasn't any meddling going on. There was no contamination going on. There wasn't any obstruction of that important piece of evidence. That's why pre-log is so important. Again, that's my opinion. Now, is Outcast still with us? Because I want to ask him a question. Outcast, do you remember how much I sort of, because Outcast has done what I can't do. Outcast looks at the body cams, for example, and he's able to, I don't know what the word is, Outcast, it's beyond the scope of my knowledge, making it, to where you can hear things, but he does that. And I thought it was bang on when he put all 4 of them. Where's the 5th one? Hey, Judge Megan E. Marshall, when she signed that order, remember the injunction that she signed in Laramie et al. Versus City of Moscow? She only looked at 4 body cams. Who's the 5th missing body cam? I'd like to know, Justice Marshall. Oh, you didn't know that there were 5 first responders with body cams? I guess that one got under you. Just like, hey, how can the crime still be going on at 425 if the SV1 with Mr. Kohberger in is seen speeding out of the neighborhood? But Outcast did a dynamite job. He lined up the 4 first responders, which then got us talking a little bit. Hey, Maiden Art, good to see you here. And Unbridled, good to see you here. So I thanked Outcast because I have relied on that work. And it's a bunch of people just getting together, everyday people like you and me, just looking at stuff and trying to make sense of things because, of course, the case is under seal. So we have to figure out. And that's why people say, well, why are you looking at, well, you know what? If you didn't seal the case like you did, like this was, some type of a Martian landing on Earth, and we needed to make sure that there wasn't a public panic, people wouldn't be looking at things today that they should have been able to see 2 years ago. That's the problem here. But Outcast did a very good job of putting all 4 of the videos together that then made you hear contemporaneously, okay, Nunez is steps foot first, supposedly, on scene. And then he's followed by Warner. And then he adds Gunderson and then Snyder. When Snyder finally is given we're going to get to that in a second. Ragnar, we're going to get to him in a minute. And then, then we see Smith sneaking in there and he walks in, so it's 5 of them. I want to know which one of the 5 Justice Marshall didn't see a couple months back when she signed that injunction, right? So anyway, hey, Ample Park, good to see you here. Sage, good to see you here. So anyway, I said, Outcast, do you realize what you've done here? You have made me realize something that I didn't realize before. I said, Outcast, where is Snyder's partner? Snyder is the canine cop. Snyder's partner is canine officer Ragnar. Beautiful golden retriever. This is a working dog. He's not a pet. He is a member of the MPD, just like anyone else is. If some criminal were to attack Ragnar, they would be charged with assault on a law enforcement officer, not on a pet. And so all of a sudden, I said, wait a second here, where's his partner? And then going through some further research, we come to find out that there was a call over by the Walmart, which is about 1.2 miles away from 1122 King Road. The K-9 team showed up at 11:33 a.m. on November 13th. There's 3 calls that happened after 11 o'clock to 911, okay, per the documentation that we've got. First was at 11:15. It was a call for a possible rug situation over by the Walgreens. 11:33, the K-9 team comes aboard. So that tells us there's only one K-9 team, and that is Snyder and Ragnar. And Ragnar's specialty, he's a rug sniffer, and he specializes in locating F. MPD went to, and we've got all the documentation for you in our research. MPD went to the Moscow City Commission in 2020, in the fall of 2021, and said, we want to add a K-9 team. It's going to cost money. We need a car that's specially equipped to transport the K-9. The K-9 needs to be, we need to buy the K-9. We need to send Snyder and the K-9 to school. Sometimes these dogs go through more training than two-legged cops do at the police academy. And it costs, but we need it to help deal with Moscow's growing rug problem. Thanks, Outcast. Outcast. I probably talked Outcast's ear off regarding Ragnar Gate, K-9 Gate. And we're going to get to it in just a second. I'm just trying to give some background because I know you know where I'm going, but everybody else doesn't, I don't think. So anyway, after I looked at Ragnar's research, I said, where's his dog? And Outcast's like, what, hell if I know. It's like, we got to call Snyder and say, where was your dog? Well, apparently, I know this is going to come as a shock to you. The 11:33 a.m., 3 calls that morning, 11:15, there was a call, possible rug situation nearby the Walgreens, 1.2 miles away from 1122. 11:33, here comes the K-9 team, and then 11:56, unconscious person at 1122 King Road. Sorry. So Outcast says to me, well, where's the report? I was like, I know this is going to come as a tremendous shock to you. No report written for the K-9 situation. Now, if Snyder is with Ragnar and they're searching, I don't know, a car or whatever it is, you think he's going to have his body cam on to make sure that all protocols are met so that if the person is arrested and challenges that search on a Fourth Amendment issue, where is Ragnar? There goes. Outcast is still trying to figure out where Ragnar is. For all we know, he still might be at the Walmart. So then I point out to Outcast. Hang on, Outcast. All right. So if he's doing a K-9 search at 11:33 a.m., minutes before 1122, he's got to have a body cam on. He had to have driven there with his MPD issued larger car. You look up some photographs of Snyder and Ragnar, you'll see the car. It's like, it looks more like a van. It's got to be equipped to transport the dog. I've seen some of these cars up close and personal. They're amazing. The dogs, like in the back, they have a place for the dog to go, all of the equipment, and you just bring out the dog. Some of them are trained to find pew-pews. Some of them jump out of planes with the Navy SEALs, and a lot more are helping with rugs. Okay, so I'm speculating that maybe, and again, pure speculation, this is opinion. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a regular American, just putting 2 and 2 together, and things are adding up to 3. Maybe Snyder heard of the call for assistance at 1122, and maybe that address was familiar to him, maybe it wasn't. So as far as we know, when you see him now, thanks to Connor, or whoever who got the body cam for 11, or maybe it's Jules, got the body, got the camera for 1112 for one of the times that the public didn't have it. You see Snyder pull up. He's in a regular car. We knew already that he walked around to 1122. And when he got there, he didn't have a body cam. It was given to him. And then it was given to him by who? Smith, right? You see him in the back putting up the yellow crime scene tape in the back of 1122 between 1122 and the 500 Queen Apartments. Now, I think it was Christina. Are you here, Christina? Christina was the first person yesterday. She said that word was going around that Snyder is having a conversation with who? Captain Lanier. Remember Captain Lanier? You got to trust us, Captain Lanier, him, right? And I wrote down the time because I had to see it for myself. It's in body cam number 5. And where's the timestamp for you guys to check it out, because I want you to take a listen to it. No, okay, it's part 6. It's at about the 14:22 mark. You see them, they're standing right where suspect vehicle 1 was seen speeding out of the neighborhood just hours earlier, right? At the corner of King and Queen in the middle of the street. And you get a glimpse of Dallinger, future Chief Dallinger. And they redact what I'm like, why are they redacting this conversation? And it's Snyder's whispering, and it sounds like he's saying, because now he's bringing Captain Lanier up to speed, right? MPD had been on scene. Ragnar is nowhere to be found. And then you hear, it sounds like Snyder saying there was a party there last night. Like Lanier's asking which house is it, and he's like pointing it out to him, Snyder. And then people swear up and down, I've heard it, and then I've not heard it. I don't know if it's because I want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, if I've been influenced by other people, but it sounds like Snyder says one of the victims, allegedly, supposedly, was a CI. Okay? Has anyone listened to that body cam footage and heard that? Solicitor is saying yes. Did you hear it? Leslie and Billy is saying she heard it. Unbrought, okay, form. Now, I have to go back. I really need, my ears are a lot older than a lot of you people here today, very young people. I've got to go back and really listen to it very closely with earphones, which I don't have right now to play it, but I'm going to throw this out. I've done some research on this topic and what cops do in certain college towns. College towns are notorious for convincing college students to sell to others. I mean, even when he went to college in the Stone Ages, he said, yeah, if you wanted to buy some weed, what do you think, you're going to go downtown Chicago somewhere? No, you get it from a college student, somebody who looks like you, who's going to class with you. That's where they get it. And sometimes, okay, Christina's saying it's Birdie's live from last night. Timestamp 3427. Again, Birdie's live from last night. Timestamp 3427. Thanks, Christina. So, okay. Outcast is saying he thinks it's Sigma Chi. Okay, I got to go back and hear it again. But Outcast, let me ask you a question. So students sometimes will want to make money, okay, and they agree to be the contact on campus and sell to fellow students. That goes on practically every campus in the United States. As much as we don't want to hear it and know it, it's a fact. College students are not going to go down, into a city that they're not familiar with if they're away from home, possibly they're going to want to buy it from someone close to them or that they know or who looks like them, go in class with them. Sometimes when those kids get pinched, what the cops will do is force them to be, which is, in my opinion, I mean, look, if you get pinched, if you've got something on you, just go through, you're going to have to, go through don't agree to be a CI, but they will, because they're afraid. They're like, oh my goodness, they're thinking short term. If this gets on my records, my parents will be very upset. It's going to follow me the rest of my life. I won't be able to get a job. I'll probably get kicked out of school. And it's going to end my, basically all my future dreams. But if you're a CI, you're not going to be a very, very well thought of by the people that are above the students that are looking to make money at the colleges, right? Okay, down the rabbit hole is saying, I reduced the speed to minus 35, Kathy, and I heard it better. And down the rabbit hole, you're hearing CI because Outcast, and he's really great with sounds. He's saying it could have been Sigma Chi. We don't know. I don't know. I want to know why he's whispering. But what I'm going to put out here, if it is what Birdie thinks it is, what Down the Rabbit Hole thinks it is, what Christina thinks it is, I'm going to make up a story here. Here's because I write fiction sometime. Cop is at a certain place somewhere in town. Hears about a situation at a home where possibly a CI is, leaves where he is or she is, and goes there. And the cop happens to be the canine cop, whose canine was purchased 6 months, 8 months before, a year before, to help with Moscow's growing rug problem. All right. Kylie is saying that she also said, I heard one of the, so that to me, like I said, I have to get my earphones on. I got to see it. I got to hear it for myself. But of any of the law enforcement, there were a ton of them that were there. You had Nunez that was there. You had Warner who was there. You had Smith who was there. You had who else? Who's the other one? The other first, Snyder, of course. Then you had all other types of people, who turned up. You had, of course, he wasn't the chief of police at that time, but you had Dallinger who was there. You had John, whatever his name was, who was there. You had a bunch of MPDs. Why would Snyder take it upon himself to approach the highest ranking official who had just gotten there and brief him on what the situation was? Canine cop, possibly working with a CI or has knowledge about a CI regarding rugs. All right. Yeah. Hey, again, not based on fact, pure speculation. I don't know what I'm just speaking, just commentary. This is not based on fact, because we really have to, I think, figure out what it was what Snyder was whispering and why he would whisper to the highest rank. Remember, Fry's not there yet. Fry will not be on scene until much later. And it's if that's the case, if that's what happened, suddenly everything makes sense. Why the case is under seal 6 months after the sole person more than who has ever been convicted for, or he pled, who was ever arrested. Which that whole case should have been it should have never been sealed to the extent it was. Shouldn't have had all these hearings behind closed doors. Shouldn't have sealed all of the evidence as they did. And then on top of it, a gag order. And now we're 6 months post him going off to prison. And all of a sudden, there's a complete stop to unsealing anything. Makes a little bit of sense. But again, we don't know. Okay, Sage is saying the audio from Connor's original is better. I would think so too, Sage. That's what I've listened to today. I went directly to the source, Connor. Right? Right? Because that's what he got from MPD. When I heard he had gotten finally the Smith body cam, which was like missing in action, and I think that's the one that Marshall didn't have for some reason. I said, Connor, wait a second here. According to page 2 of the warrant affidavit, Smith was supposedly the escort to Detective Brett Payne at 4 p.m. or shortly thereafter. Where is that on the body cam? And he said, I don't know. Hell if I know, Kathy. I mean, this is what they sent me. So Smith's body cam right away jumped up at me. And so I'm thinking that that's the one that wasn't in the group that Marshall had said that she saw when she wrote the not the gag order, the injunction binding the city of Moscow. And people were like, how, okay, if that's the case, how's ISP getting away with, 2,800 photographs like we've seen the other day? And I always thought when I looked at that injunction, it was binding on Moscow. Didn't say ISP there. Didn't say the Idaho State Police. That might have been it. But again, we've had peekaboo for the second time played for us. Okay, here's the evidence. Now we're taking it down. But yeah, I would recommend, guys, when you're doing your research, to look at Connor's video, because that is from the horse's mouth. Or even Outcast, you've got Connor's video, right? You got it, and he has all four of them together. Gundy I know. Gunderson did, Christina. He put his hand sometimes, it looked like in front of his body cam. He turned off the sound a couple of times. So they were all talking about something. Yeah, he just cut his off when he wanted to talk. What are you guys thinking? Okay, Christina's saying any one of the six could easily be the CI. Okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people some people who are convinced after looking at the evidence that's what Snyder said. They're trying to figure out which one. It's to me, it's impossible to know. It could have been any of the six, because remember, it wasn't just the four. It was not just the four who were considered victims. The two surviving roommates were considered victims. From day one in this case, they were considered victims. I mean, to the burglary count, that's count one, was burglary. That's their property. Someone came in without authorization with an intent to commit another felony. So that is an excellent point, Christina. I was thinking to myself immediately, one of the victims, four, I'm thinking it's got to be the four. No, it could be the six. It could be anybody. So Christina, yeah, any one of the six could easily have been the CI. Nothing to do with me. Okay, so down the rabbit hole, saying she remembers one of the moms saying, I hope this has nothing to do with me giving over information, paraphrasing. Kathy, have you ever seen Kaylee in any trouble? Her dad said that they would drop charges against Kaylee. We haven't found anything. I don't, it was real heartbreaking to see Kaylee's bedroom to me she just seemed super organized, she had her little Kindle with books there, and her room certainly didn't look like someone who had moved out, though. At first I thought, well, we knew that there was some furniture in there, that there was a bed in there, but you're like, and we had seen some of the Snyder early photographs. Hey, Blueberry, good to see you. We had seen some of the Snyder early photographs. Remember months back when a member of the media got them and published a few of them? That's when we saw the handprints on the window photograph. That's when we saw there was a redacted photo in Xana's room. There were a few other things. And, but then and then we saw there was one photograph in Kaylee's room that you could see Murphy hiding under the desk before he was removed. And I still don't know why he was removed. I think he might have had something of evidentiary value that ISP processing wouldn't come through for several more hours, and he's removed out of that house. And they're saying, oh, it's out of, concern for him. And it was like, you got four bodies here. He might have evidence on his coat. He might have evidence on his paws. They were, oh, he doesn't have any blood. How do you know? You don't know until it's processed. If he has, just a minute part. You saw what they did with all of that. What is it, amino? How they dumped it in certain places in that house. You can't with your eyeballs look, otherwise there wouldn't be luminol, right? the luminol market would be all dried up if people could look and see with the human eye traces of red DNA. She flipped on the gang. Christine, yeah, people don't like when people flip. Now, we're not throwing any shade at anybody. We're making no accusations. We're simply going with what the body cam, when it's slowed down, listening through earphones, what it might say. Okay. Matt, okay. Well, I don't know. Made in Art 3 is saying, looking at the photos and seeing Murphy's red DNA paw prints was terrible. That might have been a foot, a bare foot. And here's why. Because when Snyder went into the room, remember to take he took photographs, and we've seen how small that room is. He went in and took photographs. Not one of them mentioned a sheath. And as a matter of fact, not any of the 5 first responders who wrote reports said that they saw a sheath. Not Nunez, Warner, Snyder, Smith, or Gunderson. Not one of them. And we haven't seen their body cams from when they went in there. But what we do know from the Snyder report, look at how integral he's involved in everything here. He's the photographer for the MPD, right? You saw him with his, I guess it's an iPhone, taking photographs, not the quality that ISPs were. I mean, you can see quite clearly with the ISP's photos, but in his report, he's got the titles of the photographs. Not one says sheath, but he writes in there that he was able to see lividity. Do you know what lividity is? Lividity is a medical term. It's when a person is no longer on this earth, but their shell is, that the red DNA inside our body will settle at the lowest portion. Like if you're on a bed and your legs off it, it's going to look blue as opposed to red. He wrote that he was able to see lividity, and that would be consistent with a leg being off the bed. And if you look at some of those photographs, they're redacted with big black squares off the bed around where that possible. I mean, it's possible it could be Murphy too, but I think that there would have been a track of his paw prints, right? Going from Kaylee's room into Madison's room and then back to Kaylee's room, as opposed to just to one. Okay. Any other questions? The second shoe print in Dana's room, was it on the I don't know. Hey, Christina, you raise an interesting question. Ever since the body cams were released, and we saw to the extent that the Moscow Police Department were in and out of that house, the protocol usually, and I mean, I'm sure if you've watched any police department, they're saying what they say. If there's an unaliving, we got two jobs after we've determined that the person's beyond help. Number one, we have to clear the scene to make sure that everybody who's in that house, including perpetrators hiding somewhere, are out. And then we guard that crime scene, because we don't want to be spilling DNA. We don't want to contaminate it, because that's just us. We shed skin cells, right? We shed hair as we're walking around our house even. You get a scratch and you might shed some red DNA out. We shed DNA, tears, sweat. So you had multiple members of the MPD walking in and out and in and out, going in and out of the back door, which is supposed to be the point of entry and exit for the perpetrator. Then what the heck are you doing going in and out, rubbing up against possible evidence? Let the ISP come in and be able to do their job. I have said many times, I would like to know from the ISP how much DNA they picked up that belonged to the Moscow Police Department, because of all of that going up and down. I mean, how many times do you have to go up to the 3rd floor to recognize you have 2 victims there? who are unalived, and there's nobody hiding up there. Why are you continuing to go up there? Why are you on certain occasions touching the banister with no gloves on? And even the gloves that they had on, they weren't the type of gloves that the crime scene people did. You saw the crime scene people. They had a glove on and then over it, a plastic glove that they kept changing, not to cross-contaminate things. Yeah, I know. Christina is saying, why weren't there? And once we, I mean, who, I guess it shouldn't be surprising. Come on. This is a 4 human being unaliving. But for there not to be footprints, for there not to be something that the perpetrator or perpetrators dropped anywhere. But you know what? Hey, MPD, they were pretty much, in my opinion, closed-minded from the beginning. Remember when Detective Payne said on the stand at the closed hearing that Judge Hippler then allowed the transcript to come out? Why didn't you put in anyone else's, like unknown male B into SCOTUS? Well, we thought the Sheath was, our best bet. And so if we put someone else in, it would erase out all of Mr. Kohberger's information. I mean, what a response, right? Like your SCOTUS is only going to say, if you've got 3 or 4 people involved in a crime, I'm sorry, we can only help you with 1. The other 3 people, you're going to have to let go. You're just going to have to let them loose. You can't put more than 1 person in SCOTUS attached to any crime. From the beginning, Riley Nolan, that's her name. She's the manager from ISP Lab. She testified that day on the 23rd. There is a motion in limine regarding if she should be able to say touch or contact DNA at trial. This is before all of a sudden, we're not going to, we spent 2 years fighting over IgG, touch, contact. Now, we're not going to use it anymore. We're throwing it out. But she said, as that sheath was making its way from Moscow, a couple hundred miles away to Meridian, down south of Moscow, that they were told, the people in the lab, per Riley Nolan, and you can see her email, I've got it in a couple of my presentations over the past couple of days. Word is their only evidence is the sheath. They had, I think, tunnel vision on that sheath from day one. How can they say all the other swabs, all the other, pieces of plywood that they pulled out, all of the other evidence, nothing was of evidentiary value even before it went through forensic testing? How do you discount all of that? So their focus, at least in my opinion, that I give, under the First Amendment opinion, speculation entirely, is they were focused on that sheath from the beginning. You can't make that call, I don't think, on the 16th of November before you ever conduct forensic testing on anything that the sheath is the only evidence, because one of those swabs might have had DNA from the perpetrator on it, right? Or maybe that wall that you tore out with a ton of DNA on it, maybe the perp's mixed in there. Maybe the perp cut himself or herself, right? Hey, Amy, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Okay. Christina wants to know, why weren't they being honest? This was pretty excessive. I understand to protect the university, but seriously, it would have been easier. All right. So, guys, there's still a lot. Again, if you take away one thing today, please be sure to follow. It's called Hunter versus United States. This is a Supreme Court case, and it could literally change the law. It could change the law on people who sign waiver of appellate rights when they sign plea deals. The oral argument is in 40 days from now, March 3rd. You may be able, you can listen to it live. They don't have any video in the Supreme Court by tradition. It's just, you can listen live, and it took a long time for that to even happen. And just by the commentary that you hear the justices say and the questions that they ask both sides, you can sometimes get a clue or get some clues as to how they're possibly going to rule. And then the ruling it's got to be out before June, before they leave for the summer. They close down shop at the end of June, and that's it. So all of the opinions, a lot of them come out the last week of June. So we're talking just a few months from now, the spectrum regarding what can be used as grounds to try to challenge it's an appellate waiver of appellate rights in these plea agreements. It may change. Okay. Oh, Amy, thank you very much. Christina, thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come join us. Please take a look at our content. If you like it, please keep the conversation going. You know, if you have a comment, the chances are, I've seen this happen so many times. You know, people will look at the content, they'll like it, but they don't make a comment, you know, for whatever reason. And when they do, 2 or 3 people will respond and say, hey, I hadn't thought about that. Or, yeah, you're right. Or I don't think you're correct. But what it does is it keeps the conversation going on this case, which is, in my opinion, should have been happening while the case was proceeding, you know, not 6+ months after it's closed. All right, everybody. Please, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. Those of you who have hyped our content, I greatly appreciate it. We want to get, our message is, you know, typically we like to look at the documents and explain them to the extent that we can, because the people who come to our channel, they want to know for themselves. They don't want me telling them what the deal is. They don't want anyone else telling them. They're intelligent enough to figure it out for themselves. They just need a little bit of help with some of the legalese. Let's face it, anybody here in this chat could have been on that jury, because it's usually not lawyers and judges. Remember, Judge said he got a summons for his own case when the trial was supposed to be back in October of 2023 before Kohberger waived speeding. So it's people like you and other people that you meet on our channel and some of the other content creators that could have very easily been on that jury. All right, everybody. Thank you. Oh, it's my pleasure, Blue Rain. I really, really love it. Charm Free. Hey, glad you made it. Glad you made it. Yeah, listen to it if you want. Charm Free went over like 5 really critical points that I'm recommending that people look at in the days and weeks to come. So yeah, thanks for being here. All right, everybody. Soul Sisters, first person on today. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, everybody, thank you for joining us here today.